When an NFL ref messes up a call, it flips the game upside down and sometimes in the worst way possible. From premature whistleblowing to dropping a bombshell ruling that cost a team the Super Bowl, these are the top 10 worst referee calls in NFL history. And first, we've got to kick things off with a classic blunder that's almost too wild to believe, because messing up a coin toss has to be one of the craziest slip-ups any ref could pull. Number 10, coin toss fail. It all went down in a clash between the Steelers and the Lions in a game on Thanksgiving back in 1998. And the ref who stole the show with the ultimate blunder was none other than Phil Luckett. During a coin toss at the beginning of overtime, Luckett asked Jerome Bettis, the Steelers running back, to pick heads or tails. Bettis confidently called tails.
Heads, tails, tails, heads. Call it plays in the air. Heads is the call. He said heads.
But Luckett heard heads, and lo and behold, the coin lands on tails just as Bettis called it. But instead of giving the Steelers the ball, he gave it to Detroit. And like any good team, the Lions seized the moment, drive down the field, and settle for a field goal, sealing a 19-16 victory over the Steelers on Turkey Day. And if that wasn't already embarrassing, Luckett's infamous coin flip fiasco was broadcast for the whole nation to see on national television. Well, at least that error didn't send him into retirement like it did with Jeff Triplett in number 9, the premature whistleblowing incidents. Yep, you heard that right. You see, before the game, Jeff had been MIA from NFL playoff action for 3 whole seasons, and boy, it showed. When he got the nod to ref the Chiefs-Titans showdown in the 2018 wildcard, it was like watching a comedy of errors unfold right before our eyes. During the game, Triplett's premature whistle on not 1, but 2 plays turned this matchup into the legendary forward progress game. Instead of letting those plays roll as fumbles, he calls Marcus Mariota down because, well, his forward progress supposedly stopped dead in its tracks. The call was so cringeworthy that Triplett decided to hang up his whistle the very next day.
Mariota flattened. Back at the 30-yard line, the ball on the ground.
Now, that's what you call leaving with a bang. And if there's anything worse than that, it has to be the call that led to number 8, the Burt Emanuel rule. During a Tampa Bay vs. Rams showdown back in the 1999 NFC Championship game, Tampa Bay was on the brink of a comeback as quarterback Sean King launched a missile to wide receiver Burt Emanuel, who made a jaw-dropping diving catch deep in Rams territory. But despite Emanuel clearly cradling the ball with both hands as he hit the ground, the officials dropped the bombshell, calling it incomplete because they thought the ball's nose grazed the turf.
When you take a look at Burt moving forward there, boom, ball is on the ground at this point, and that's what made this an incomplete pass.
And that's when all hell broke loose. Fans went nuts arguing about what the heck actually counted as a catch in this league. In the end, the chaos led to a rule change that finally set the record straight on what constituted a legit reception. And today, that rule is known as the Burt Emanuel rule.
Today, Burt Emanuel's catch would be legal, but that ruling came 6 months too late for the Buccaneers.
Okay, let's be real here. Having a rule made after you is sick. And you can say Tom Brady can relate to an extent, because in 2002, a rule was made as a result of a terrible call that was made in his favor. And that rule is, number 7, the tuck rule. With just 1:47 left on the clock in a game between the Oakland Raiders and New England Patriots, Brady got sacked by Charles Woodson in what looked like a surefire fumble.
Well, there's no doubt his arm was going forward.
Sure, but he had held up.
At the time, the Raiders were up 13-10, and this should have sealed the deal for them. But the refs had other plans, because instead of calling it a fumble and a turnover, they ruled it an slammed. Even Brady himself admitted in an interview that it was indeed a fumble. And speaking of fumbles, this next fumble cost a team a winning spot. Number 6, the Fail Mary. Back on September 24, 2012, the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers went head-to-head in a game that would go down in NFL history for all the wrong reasons. In the dying moments of the game, Russell Wilson chucked up a Hail Mary pass to Golden Tate. And what happened next was so crazy, it made it to our list. Both Tate and the defender, M.D. Jennings, went up for the ball, and miraculously, they both came down with it at the same time. After reviewing the play, it was as clear as day that Jennings had actually snagged the interception. I mean, come on, the dude had possession first. But did the replacement ref see it that way? Nope. Despite all scoring plays being subject to review in the NFL at the time, those replacement refs somehow managed to bungle it up big time. Instead of awarding the interception to Green Bay and calling it a day, they handed the game-winning touchdown to the Seahawks. And that, folks, is how the Seattle Seahawks secured one of the most insane wins in the NFL, all thanks to a terrible call that got nicknamed the Fail Mary. But you know what's worse than the Failed Mary? It's getting penalized for nothing, just like the Giants got during number 5, 2002 NFC wildcard game. Back in 2002, the San Francisco 49ers and the New York Giants were locked in a heated battle. Tensions were running high and the Giants were lining up for a field goal attempt. And just then, things took a wild turn when the snap got botched. Holder Matt Allen tried to salvage the play by picking up the bobbled snap and tossing a pass to Rich Subert. But before Subert could even think about catching the ball, he got knocked down by a defender, setting the stage for what should have been a clear pass interference call in favor of the Giants. But sadly for them, the refs had other ideas. Instead of calling pass interference, they penalized the Giants for having an illegal man downfield, and the next day, the NFL came out and admitted that the refs totally dropped the ball on this one. They knew Subert was an eligible receiver, yet they still made the wrong call. Damn, that must have hurt. But certainly not as much as the time, number 4, the Cowboys got screwed over by a terrible call. Detroit was clinging on to a slim lead with a 3rd and 1 inside Dallas territory. It was do or die time for both teams. But then, Cowboys linebacker Anthony Hitchens decided to stir up some controversy. He interfered with tight end Brandon Pettigrew, grabbing his arm before the ball even got there. The referee saw the infraction and threw the flag, but right after, head linesman Jerry Bergman swooped in and overruled the call, claiming there was no grab from where he was standing. And just like that, Dallas not only snagged the win, but they also managed to get away with one of the most insane missed calls in the NFL. Now, you see, terrible calls are not just the ones the refs make wrongly, it could also be the ones they didn't make at all. Like, number 3, the call that didn't happen. In a Saints vs. Rams clash back in 2019, wide receiver Tommy Lee Lewis was fouled by Rams defensive back Nickel Roby-Coleman as a pass arrived from future Hall of Famer Drew Brees. Now, for any football fan worth their salt, it was as clear as day that this was a textbook example of a penalty-worthy play that should have sent the refs reaching for their flags faster than you can say touchdown. Because for one, Roby-Coleman annihilated Lewis well before he had a chance to attempt a catch. In most cases like this, football officials throw a penalty flag, but that didn't happen. The refs seem to have misplaced their glasses that day because no flag was thrown. And just like that, the Rams ended up winning in overtime. Just like the time. Number 2, the Broncos walked away with an insane win. Of course, all thanks to a shitty call. So, the Denver Broncos were practically knocking on the Chargers' door just a yard away from victory with the clock ticking down in the final moments. Jay Cutler dropped back to throw, but he had butterfingers. Second call, ruling the play as an incomplete pass. But when instant replay hits the scene, it shows that it was a fumble and the Chargers should have been celebrating. Tough luck for them, because thanks to the timing of the whistle and blowing the play dead, possession couldn't be changed. Tough luck, right? Anyways, now that we're down to number 1, we've got to talk about number 1, the absolute worst call in NFL history. Nah, scratch that. It wasn't just the worst call in NFL history, it was the worst officiated Super Bowl ever. Just in case you're a little lost, we're talking about Super Bowl 40. You see, typically the best refs in the league get the opportunity to officiate the biggest stage. But this officiating crew was downright terrible. This crew got smoked big time by fans after a holding call. But that wasn't the only terrible call in the game. There was also a questionable offensive pass interference call and a blocked below the waist call on Seattle quarterback Matt Hasselbeck. For everyone who saw the game, one thing was crystal clear. Every call was against the Seahawks. It was such a mess that even the lead ref himself, Bill Levy, had to own up to the fact that he missed a ton of major calls. But it certainly didn't make any difference because his apology came about 4 years later. So there you have it, frenzies. Which of these calls left you speechless? Let us know in the comments.